One of the biggest factors to building a roster in the offseason is definitely depth. Even though the Mets approached a lot of versatility last offseason, one of their biggest woes will continue to be quality depth. It was a very top-heavy roster. And the Mets can definitely address this in a few ways. And usually a lot of depth pieces come on one-year contracts, whether they're prove-it deals or quality guys that are starting caliber players on any ordinary roster, but on a World Series roster, they're depth. And those are the types of players that we're going to talk about today. Here are 6 one-year contracts that the Mets should consider this offseason.
On 3-2, Vader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
So we know that there's a lot of areas that the Mets need to approach this offseason. There is a lot of free agents coming off the books. There are a lot of decisions that they need to make, a lot of hard decisions, and this roster could look a lot different. The goal of this is to either find a bargain or find good value with a one-year deal.
The past couple of years, you look at guys like Jonathan VR, who came in and gave you solid production, guys like Aaron Luke, guys like Adam Ottavino. So the Mets have had a decent track record lately of bringing these guys on one-year deals and getting ample value out of them.
Another thing that you can consider with this, if someone is a full-on breakout candidate, you could trade them at the deadline for some assets possible. So without further ado, let's get to these 6 one-year contracts that the Mets need to consider. Let's start with a utility outfielder, switch hitter, who was traded during the deadline this year, Robbie Grossman. He's someone that I like to call a value catfish. Overall, last season, what'd he do? Nothing. He did absolutely nothing. He looks terrible. He was a negative win value player. Well, guess what? This man absolutely kills lefties. He's a serviceable defender. He can be a switch hitter off the bench. And as for all the power that he has, killing lefties, and the defense that he displays in the outfield, he can cancel out Naquin and Ruff. So you can have one player doing 2 jobs. We don't know if he's going to accept a one-year deal, but for the overall season and then for the overall value that he gave to the Braves and the Tigers this year, you can definitely get him on a bargain.
And again, we like to being able to fill multiple holes. He can fill the 4th outfielder replacement for Tyler Naquin, and he can take Darren Ruff's job. A guy who can hit left-handed pitching and can play the outfield, give you some positional flexibility. Obviously, Mark Canha did not hit well against left-handed pitching last year, was better against righties, and opens up a spot to potentially add another guy who can either give you a backup infielder or maybe another outfielder that can give you some outfield and infield positional flexibility, which again are bench with no positional flexibility to add some guys who can play all over the diamond and bring other value.
Robbie Grossman has pretty much come off the bench and been a platoon role for his entire career, so I don't see why he would want to stop. He gets on base, he's a great offensive player, and he can give you some quality defense, and also can make the outfield map a little bit more deeper than it is. Outside of Canha and Marte, maybe McNeil. Nimmo obviously has not been signed. There's not really much afterwards. Lee, Plummer haven't really proved much in the major leagues, so the outfield depth will look a lot more deeper if you were to add a guy like Robbie Grossman, who can give you quality off the bench and also could be a starting caliber player if there were an injury in your regular lineup. Now let's get to the second position player we have on here. This is more of a veteran, postseason experience type of guy you'd like to add to your roster, and that is Evan Longoria. He has a team option with San Francisco, but they've already established that they're going to reject it this offseason. Has a lot of postseason experience. He's regressed a little bit defensively, but he is still serviceable. Kills left-handed pitching. He still gets on base. He's still a 15 to 20 home run guy in a full season. He's always been one of those launch angle kings and give you a little bit more value playing at third base and also for hitting a little bit more power. It would be a little bit more expensive, but if you were to bring in Evan Longoria, I'd say that this would probably replace a James McCann contract that you're trying to get rid of at about $10 million. He's 37 years old, definitely not someone you want starting every day, but again, a weapon you can take off the bench with versatility.
This was my pick of the 6. This was the guy I vouched for to be on this video. A 37-year-old San Francisco Giant, supposed lefty killer. That just sounds like Darren Ruff. But Evan Longoria has always been a better player in his prime than Darren Ruff ever was. One of these guys with a ton of postseason experience and a guy who showed up in the postseason as well. You've got a lot of lefties you have to beat. Evan Longoria can be that guy, not playing every day. This isn't prime Longo. Again, you're not going to get your 30 homers, gold glove caliber defense. You're not going to get that. But obviously, he's had some injury problems because he's been able to play. He has to play every day with San Francisco. Put him in a platoon potentially against lefties. You move Escobar to second, and you put McNeil in the outfield. Gives you more flexibility. Can play first base if need be, and he will give you more value than Darren Ruff. He's an aging veteran, but again, the Mets could use more postseason experience. Obviously, the Mets finally got their taste. They're 3 games against the San Diego Padres, but another guy with postseason experience can give you a couple positions. Even as he's aging, is still giving you good offensive production.
So let's address that elephant in the room. We obviously know that Brett Beatty has made the majors, and he's going to most likely be on the opening day roster. If you were to add Evan Longoria, it looks like someone, whether it's Escobar or Guillorme or maybe Vientos, gets left off of that roster. I would just ask, how would you address this with the whole Beatty situation?
In my world, potentially Eduardo Escobar's money is traded. Potentially.
Ooh,
free up some more space that you can potentially address the rotation. I think I comped him too long ago in our top 10 prospect video. Eduardo Escobar is a good stopgap to let Brett Beatty. But I think a better platoon for Brett with Longo as the third base platoon. That's a 4th outfielder. So there's plenty of ways the Mets could do this to construct the roster.
Now let's get to the third and final position player on this list, Corey Dickerson. I see this as another outfield depth option, just like Robbie Grossman could be if you were to bring in another outfielder, whether it was Nimmo or somebody else. What I like about him, he hits righties well, and he hits fly balls. He doesn't kill ants. He puts the ball in play. He pretty much does everything that Tyler Naquin can do offensively, but he barely strikes out. As for him offensively, I see him as someone who has a little bit more pop, but he's kind of like the replacement caliber player of Jeff McNeil that you would want to come off of your bench. I would love to bring this guy in only because of just the outfield options that we do have. If we were to bring back Brandon Nimmo, there's really not much. Definitely a different approach. I don't know if Billy Epler would really go for it because I don't think he's that big of a Billy Epler type of hitter, but it's definitely someone to think about at the market value of about $5 to $6 million. Couldn't hurt.
He struggled mightily the first 2 months of the season. Like, he was brutal. Again, Tyler Naquin-esque. He was like 0 for 4. Like, he was DFA'd. They brought him back, and then he started to get hot. Obviously, when the Cardinals did their devil magic in mid-June, it went on that crazy run where guys like Lars Nootbaar and himself. If he's your 4th outfielder, I don't hate it. Again, he is better than Tyler Naquin. He'll make more contact than Tyler Naquin, so that's already a big plus in my book. Defensively, he's okay. He's not great. He's a corner outfielder. That's what he is. Going for a couple of $1 million, willing to be a 4th outfielder to come off the bench. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I look at this as a depth chart of if they were to bring back Nimmo. Nimmo, Canna, Marte, then you have Jeff McNeil maybe as your 4th outfielder, and then Corey Dickerson as your 5th outfielder. It's a pretty good depth chart, if you ask me. It's an extra $2 million that you may have to spread out to replace a Tyler Naquin, where you get all the good qualities of Tyler Naquin. He eliminates the one struggle that he has, being strikeouts. It's a cheap option as to where you can expand the outfield depth. Now let's get to the pitchers on this list. Matt Boyd. I would say that this guy would get a multi-year deal if he was healthy all year. One thing I like about this guy is that he's a very balanced quality pitcher. He's a barrel suppressor. He's very tough on righties and lefties. He has a very similar balance between them. And he is recovering off of Tommy John surgery, but it's worth a 1-year deal. And he can also replace the role that Joely Rodriguez has because he does everything that he does, maybe a little bit lower of the levels of contact management, but still well, but he actually can throw a strike. And he also could start too, so it could give you a little bit more flexibility to maybe replace the other depth starters that you have, such as David Peterson, who I do not trust, Tyler McGill, we don't know what the deal is with him, and Joey Lucchesi, who we don't know will be a starter or a reliever, but also can give you a lot of innings. Out of all 6 that we're talking about here, I think this is the biggest low-risk, high-reward situation for the Mets.
Could he potentially be one of the guys to fill Trevor Williams' role as a guy who could potentially be that spot 6th starter in your rotation. Oh yeah, Scherzer got injured again. Okay, pop in Matt Boyd to give you 4 to 5 innings. AAV shouldn't be crazy, but if the Mets can say, hey, we'll give you plenty of luxury, maybe again, if he's your second lefty in the pen, if they do add another guy, you can go get a lefty out, but also I need a spot start. You can feel comfortable. Matt Boyd, I think, would be great. He pitched well with Seattle in his limited innings. Again, the biggest thing with him is health. You give him a 1-year deal. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but you could definitely see him come into spring training, get injured, and then he's done for the year. And that's the only question mark with Matt Boyd is, can he be healthy enough to give you any value?
You have that flexibility where he can value himself and you can also value him, giving him a raise if he pitches well, maybe having a mutual option in there, something like that. But as for 1-year contracts, I think this is one of the biggest steals, considering that if he were fully healthy last season, he was getting a multi-year deal in the free agent market. Now let's head on to the bullpen for the 5th man on this list, who is Craig Stammen. I understand he's 38 years old. He had a tough year on the outside, but he does have those great underlying peripherals. He's a big ground ball guy. He's got that beautiful knuckle curve that he's still pumping. The only thing is, he did not pitch a full season last year. You can get him cheap at age 38. The recent injury history, it's $4 million. Very similar to a man named Adam Ottavino. Another one of those arms that I do not want to be the main bullpen arm that they add, like how Adam Ottavino kind of was. Even though I want the Mets to aim younger, you can have a little bit of a combination of those older guys. And on a 1-year deal, I definitely take it.
Using the Michael Givens role, I wouldn't hate it. But again, it's just the age thing. Is he over the hill? Even though, again, he gets the ground balls, he still has the underlying metrics look good. I'm okay with it. But again, low risk, high reward kind of guy. I'm not against it, but hopefully it's not the biggest, the main deal, but I'd think about it.
I think the quantity comes in as to one of the arms you bring in on a 1-year deal, and also the quality can come in a low risk, high reward situation, once again, just like Matt Boyd. The final man on this list is a arm that I am definitely pushing for the Mets to go after in the offseason, because I think that the Phillies did a terrible job with him and were the reason why he got injured, and he is a very talented reliever, but hopefully nobody knows that right now. At the $5 million market range, Corey Knebel. He has a huge injury history, but he does have great postseason success in 15 career innings. He's a big strike spammer. He's a fantastic contact manager. They made him completely prioritize his fastball, which was getting bled over completely over the plate. But one of his biggest weapons was the fact that he could complement that with great breaking stuff. And the Phillies didn't do that. He's hurt. I think it's definitely another one of those pieces that you can bring into this bullpen of a prove-it deal of a guy you know is talented and can give you quality out of the bullpen.
All-star closer for the Brewers, and then he goes to the Dodgers and was a great setup man. Was Blake Trinan before Blake Trinan for the Dodgers, before Evan Phillips. He was one of their pet projects that they went in, fixed, went from the Dodgers. When he was injured with Milwaukee, came in, became a stud. Knebel's had success in the past. Philly's not the greatest pitching market. We don't know when he's going to pitch because obviously he had the surgery. So if he's a cheap deal, I'm not against it. I think there are some better options. But again, on a minor league deal, I wouldn't mind.
I think we've all pretty much noticed a trend. If you can throw strikes and you can induce ground balls, you're definitely a friend of me. As for the Mets, depth is extremely important, and I really hope that they do address it to have a full 26-man roster and maybe some other guys in AAA that are major league ready. I don't want them playing 26 to 26. That's the main goal here, and we'll see what they do this offseason to fill out this roster.